listener production.
Hey, Tara Cassidy with you and welcome to The Briefing. Taliban and tourism aren't two words you'd usually put together, but an Australian content creator has become the latest traveller to cause controversy over a financially supported trip to Afghanistan.
They always show the picture of Afghanistan, the best views, the hotels, the food, the hospitality. But have they ever gone to any prisons where women are there? No. Have they ever talked or interviewed any women in Afghanistan that in what situation are you? No.
That deep dive with a former Afghan government worker and Senator Fatima Payman is coming up in the second half of this episode. First though, let's get into the headlines with Chris Spiru. It's Thursday, the 18th of September.
Hey Tara, and to you listening. We're starting in London, where thousands of people have taken to the streets in protest of Donald Trump's visit to the UK. Authorities say around 1,600 officers have been deployed as 5,000 people joined the Stop Trump Coalition demonstration, some holding signs saying immigrants welcome, Trump not, others calling the US president a fascist, tyrant, racist, and a nasty orange lump, Tara.
And this, of course, comes after police arrested a number of protesters just yesterday over a separate demonstration after they projected a video of Trump and Epstein on the towers of Windsor Castle, Chris. Now, this is Trump's second state visit to the UK as president, the first being in 2019 when he was hosted by the late Queen. But this time around, Trump and Melania touched down in their helicopter and once again received a royal welcome at Windsor, being greeted by Will and Kate and then King Charles and Queen Camilla.
The President and First Lady, the King and Queen, we've also seen the Prince and Princess of Wales. They are being carried in a procession through the grounds of Windsor Castle.
Some 120 horses and 1,300 members of the British military took part in the welcoming ceremony, which UK officials say is the largest welcome for a state visit to Britain in living memory.
Yes, and Trump is next due to meet with the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, where they're expected to talk tariffs, trade, including a multi-billion-dollar tech and AI deal, as well as global issues, including the wars in Gaza, Russia, and Ukraine. Now, Tara, a lot of people are going to be seeing the word soft diplomacy being thrown around today, and I'm just going to play this little grab from the BBC.
This is soft diplomacy of the creamiest kind with a side portion of ceremonial caviar.
Now, that was royal commentator Caroline Aston there. And look, for those who don't know, soft diplomacy is these things that governments can do without signing formal deals. So, we have this with the Chinese pandas. We also have this with that NRL team that's been announced in Papua New Guinea. That hasn't, come to full fruition just yet. But this is what soft diplomacy is all about. And the accusation here is that the UK is going that real extra mile this time around, rolling out the red carpet, doubling the amount of personnel that are there on the ground, marching and shooting guns into the air to give Trump that royal welcome, to make him feel special, with the ambition of removing that 25% tariff on UK steel exports, and just to make sure that he stays on side in these really, really uncertain times. So it'll be interesting to see what else Trump is treated to on his state visit.
Back home now and to Victoria, where police are warning a con man claiming to be raising money for the families of two officers allegedly killed by sovereign citizen Desi Freeman is preying on locals and businesses in Pawnpukka. Vic Police say it received a report of a man posing as a police officer, attempting to obtain donations of between $500 and $2,500 in exchange for business advertisements.
While authorities are continuing to investigate the allegations, they are advising locals to not make any payments and to report it to police. It says the only police recognised fundraiser in the state is the Victoria Police Legacy Fund, which has raised more than $135,000 for the families of officers Neil Thompson and Vadim Devat Hodart.
Now, investigators are still searching for Desi Freeman, who escaped into bushland after the shootings over 3 weeks ago, with police now offering $1 million for information that leads to the fugitive's arrest.
A Victorian city set to take part in an Australian first trial in a bid to combat gender-based violence after the death of 3 local women. The 4-year trial in Ballarat was announced after 51-year-old Samantha Murphy disappeared while going for a run and was allegedly murdered, after the killing of 23-year-old Hannah Maguire by her ex-boyfriend, and the murder-suicide of mother Rebecca Young by her partner.
Yeah, after the deaths, basically 3 principals brought local students together who then agreed on wanting to effect change after these tragedies. And they've now got plans to, quote, flood communities with campaigns, education and support services in a real attempt to try and shift the attitudes and behaviours that have been driving such violence in this community. Now, the $9.8 million trial is going to focus on men, children, young people and new parents, particularly fathers, as a priority, and target areas like workplaces, sport clubs, neonatal settings and schools.
Yeah, and according to those behind the trial, part of the issue is that, those problematic attitudes and behaviours that are witnessed by young people among their peers in sport groups and at home, which really, really undermines progress and positive messaging. We know now that there's over 60 schools in Ballarat that have signed up to take part in this respectful relationships education program. That's according to The Guardian. And Tara, I happen to think that this is a really good idea. It feels like we're really getting to the root of what this is, and the root of that is these environments that young boys and young men and women seem to hang out a lot in.
Yeah, I think it's an incredible move, particularly by the schools, to try and kind of take charge and realising how much kids' attitudes are moulded in places like that. And it's something that needs to happen and be openly discussed in classrooms, at home, among friends, because the stats tell us, like just last year alone, there were 175 victims of homicide-related domestic and family violence in Australia, over 40,000 victims of sexual assault, which is the highest rate on record according to the ABS, while 50 Australian women have been killed this year already, according to the Australian Femicide Watch. So something has got to change.
One half of the iconic ice cream brand Ben & Jerry's has walked away from the company after claiming its long-fought social mission has been silenced by its owner. Co-founder Jerry Greenfields accused the world's biggest ice cream company, Unilever, of breaking its contract, announcing in a post on his co-founder Ben Cohen's social media that he was resigning, saying, "This is one of the hardest and most painful decisions I've ever made," and that after 47 years with a broken heart, he's decided he can no longer remain a Ben & Jerry's employee.
Yeah, and that's because, according to Jerry, human rights activism has always been a huge part of the Ben & Jerry's brand, with a clause even included in the sale contract when they sold the company to that British multinational, Unilever, in 2000, stating that it needed to stay committed to that humanitarian cause, which he and Ben had apparently remained on as employees to try and help steer. However, things started to break down when the co-founders took a stand against an Israeli distributor they say had been selling their ice cream in illegal settlements in the West Bank.
Unilever, which for those who don't know is the mega company that owns ice cream brands like Magnum, Wheeze, Streets, etc., then actually sold the whole Ben & Jerry's operation in Israel to that specific distributor, and as a result the ice creams were sold again in those areas. On top of that, Unilever's also accused of watering down the business's opposition to President Donald Trump and any of its pro-Palestine activism, with Jerry Greenfield saying this had all been done out of fear of upsetting those in power.
And Australia's answer to Usain Bolt has pulled off something not even the retired fastest man alive could, making it out of his heat and into a semi-final at his first major championship.
Now Gout, he's strong in the last 80. He's coming through. He's going to get there in the heat. He's through to the semi-finals. And the young man's talent just comes to the surface here in front of the world.
That audio thanks to Nine there. And yes, that was the 17-year-old sprinting phenomenon, Gout, who's through to the semi-finals of the World Athletics Championship in Tokyo after finishing third in the men's 200-metre heat last night and telling media it was a great experience.
Running against the big dogs, it's great to be out here competing on the world stage. So I'm just happy to be here and can't wait for the semi.
Oh, and we are happy that he is there, Tara Cassidy. Now, look, this was a highly anticipated debut for Gout in the men's. And actually, Usain Bolt had given him some advice not too long ago about about how, the jump from juniors to seniors is a lot tougher, and it's a very, very different ball game in the men's, and not to be upset if he doesn't qualify, because at the end of the day, while Bolt absolutely smashed age group records as a youngin', it wasn't until he was 22 that he broke the 100-metre world record twice.
But look at Gout. Look at Gout.
Yes, and you can continue watching Gout tonight. Tonight is the semi-final that will be playing out on Channel 9.
Yeah, very exciting. And it's actually not the only Aussie success we've had this week at these championships. We claimed our first medals via pole vaulter Curtis Marshall and runner Jess Hull in the 1,500 metres, both bringing home the bronze, which gotta love these talented Aussie athletes. And I just love all the hype around it, particularly Gout, because he hails from Ipswich, Chris, which is just outside of Brisbane. So we're claiming him there. We're claiming him.
Of course, there's a Queensland connection that you are aware of, Tara Cassidy. That is it for our headlines for today. Coming up next is Helen Smith's deep dive, looking into the world of Taliban tourism, how an Aussie travel blogger has brought the story a little closer to home, and what 2 Afghan women think about it. Have a listen to that up next.
More and more Western influencers and bloggers are stepping foot into Afghanistan in what's being dubbed Taliban tourism, which many experts say is part of a deliberate plan involving the regime and international tour companies. Now, while these creators say they're documenting their visits to showcase the real Afghanistan, others say they're putting a glossy shine on one of the world's most brutal and oppressive regimes. Now, influencers from the US and the UK have faced that exact criticism over the years. But more recently, one Aussie travel blogger, Chloe Baredinsky, brought it a little closer to home, coming under fire for her trip.
Was my trip to Afghanistan sponsored or gifted? Are you out of your mind? No. I don't think they've got money to be throwing around paying for influencers.
She insists her 2-month trip wasn't sponsored content.
Who the started the rumour that my trip to Afghanistan was sponsored by the Taliban? I actually can't even not laugh because it is the most absurd thing in the entire world.
But the ABC has since found that a fifth of what she has spent on accommodation, food, permits and guides was covered by a travel company, a fact that she didn't disclose, which could contravene Australian consumer law. Nasima Kakaea worked for Afghanistan's Ministry of Women Affairs, who you'll hear from a little later in the chat. Firstly, though, Senator Fatima Payman was born in Afghanistan and she joins me now. Senator Payman, what is your message to Australian creators who are making content from their travels to Afghanistan?
Look, my message to them is they should not be making something trendy that is reeking of tyranny. We're seeing the oppression that women are going through, and for them to, whether they're paid or unpaid, to be spreading the propaganda, normalizing an oppressive regime, and giving them that legitimacy is absolutely abhorrent. It should be condemned. And I think a lot of people have come out and there's been backlashes against these influencers because, this is it's just lacking human decency.
How concerned are you about the reports that some of these influencers and content creators are being paid either directly or indirectly by the Taliban to post about their trip?
Look, it's very concerning that this propaganda campaign is going on, that the Taliban are potentially trying to polish their global image, trying to cash in tourist dollars and shining a light on, yes, the natural beauty of Afghanistan, but completely neglecting the human rights abuses against women and girls. And we cannot ignore that barbarity. We cannot allow this sort of propaganda dressed as wanderlust.
And what are the dangers and some of the harms in legitimizing a regime like the Taliban?
It normalizes their oppression. It makes it seem like what women and girls are going through is a farce. And these influencers, let's face it, they are there only for a short period of time, 5-6 days. Women have to endure this reality every single day of their life. And I don't think people's suffering should ever be used for clicks or for fame or to mask an injustice that's taking place. But the limelight is taken away from that suffering, and instead trying to portray the Taliban as a government that's doing really great things for Afghanistan. These influencers have no idea what they're getting themselves into. And if I were them, just completely turn around, come back to Australia. Do not be normalizing something that, you're essentially insulting every Afghan woman who has been silenced, who's been tortured, who's been dehumanized.
Some of these creatives have defended their trips, saying that while they're there, they've been volunteering or donating care packages. How true do you think that is, and how meaningful are those efforts?
Afghan women, the diaspora community outside of Afghanistan and the women inside of Afghanistan are saying, don't speak for us, speak with us. And that resonated quite a lot with not just myself, but so many women out there who are saying that you've no idea what's going on in Afghanistan. You don't even have an ounce of understanding of what these women are going through. And by you giving these care packages just for, a photo op or an opportunity to, again, deflect and turn the attention away from that dehumanization and onto the little acts of charity. I mean, it would be a bigger act of charity if they were to confront the Taliban PR machine, if they were to ask those tough questions, if they were to really challenge this regime that thrives on violence and misogyny and censorship. Like, that would actually be them contributing to justice and human rights of women and girls and feminism on a broad sense globally.
What does a regime like the Taliban gain from having more Westerners travelling to the country?
Their tourism, their industries, they get international money coming in, because obviously being such a cruel regime that everyone is against, and I think the only country that has legitimized or acknowledged the Taliban regime or has given them any form of recognition is Russia. We can just paint this lovely picture that, Afghan women are on the streets. They're just walking normally and there's nothing to see here. Let's not talk about what happens on a school level, employment level, education level, women's voices being referred to as, instruments of vice and being shunned and condemned for even using their voice in public spaces. Let's not talk about that. Let's just look at the landscapes, the scenery. Let's start normalizing little children being trained as part of the Taliban. Like, that's just insane.
Senator Payman, thank you so much for joining us on The Briefing.
Thanks so much for having me.
Nasima Kakaea worked for Afghanistan's Ministry of Women's Affairs until it was abolished and replaced by Taliban morality police in 2021, and is currently the Secretary of Women for Change, a non-profit organisation aimed at empowering Afghan women. Nasima, can you paint a picture of what life looks like right now in Afghanistan?
Yeah, I've not visited Afghanistan currently. I've visited Afghanistan in 2023, and I found it very different from the time I lived there. I've been working in a Ministry of Women's Affairs in Afghanistan from 2012 up to 2017. So I found it totally different. That ministry is absolutely demolished now. Women are not given their rights. Women are not working. In the ministry where I was working, about 275 women were employed. And now there is no woman at all. They have taken the basic rights of women. Education, being in the public, even from the gyms, even from the parks, even from the traveling alone. And the sad news is that today I just heard that they have disconnected the fiber internet from some of the provinces because the women tried to make YouTube channels. They wanted to share their daily lives and they would earn something. And they have finished this one today. From the day that Taliban took over Afghanistan, whatever they said, they have completed that, especially against women. So, as a travel agent, I do have lots of passengers traveling to Afghanistan. So when they travel, from the airport, their passports will be checked and they know which country do they belong to. I've seen even the influencers that the Taliban know that they are my influencers. So what do? They escort them. They coordinate them with the best hotels and they give them the best security. Why? Because the next day when they return home, they are not going to say that Afghanistan is not safe for them. They always show the picture of Afghanistan, the best views, the hotels, the food, the hospitality. But have they ever gone to any prisons where women are there? No. Have they ever gone to any shut doors of the schools and knocked that why this girl school is shut? No. Have they ever talked or interviewed any women in Afghanistan that in what situation are you? Can you travel alone from one city to another city? Why are you fully covered even in the hot summer? Have they? No. Many girls were arrested by Taliban. Why? Because they were the activists. They were talking. They wanted to study. They were raising the voice. And after some times when they were out of the jails, they were pregnant. Why? The Taliban soldiers made them pregnant.
A lot of the content that we are seeing coming out of these influencers and creators doesn't reflect what you just described there. Why do you think they are choosing to highlight the moments that they are posting?
Because you know what? When they travel to Afghanistan, it's just for fun or for a tour. Bamyan is a province in central Afghanistan where the Buddha statues are there. So it is a touristic place where most people go for tourism. We've got a lot of foreigners who traveled this year there. They were escorted by Taliban. And while my family traveled from another province to there, they were not allowed to enter. It's only for the people who influence. The freedom of speech has been absolutely removed. All the media and the television, they broadcast the thing when the Taliban tell them. If anything against them, their media will be shut. This is the reality. I do talk to my people over there back home. I've got relatives left home, and I do talk to them, and I know the difference. And the local people, if you go to them, they will cry. The economy is down. The employment is weak. In the streets, it's not safe. The people cannot travel after 6 p.m. because the thieves will stop them and get their money and the mobile and the things. These things have been increased there. But in the bigger picture, they show Afghanistan is safe. They have actually built some roads, and they show that we are doing a lot of things against terrorism while they themselves are terrorists.
Mm. What you're saying here is so powerful and is often not shown. But some of these creators, they're defending their travels and they're saying that they're actually helping communities and locals. How realistic is that? Can they be doing anything to actually help the local communities and the locals?
Unfortunately, no. Everyone goes for their own personal benefit. They are going for their own purpose. The channel, the YouTubers, they get their own viewers and they raise money for themselves. They do not give this raised money to Afghanistan girls and women, to the local people even. If they give it, for example, when they arrive at the airport, if they are asked for money or visa, it goes to the pockets of Taliban, of course. It will not go to the pockets of local women and local families.
And finally, what would you say to anyone thinking about traveling to Afghanistan for tourism?
If they go, at least I advise them, please do go to one of the schools which is shut for women. Please once knock the doors of the prison and say what's going on there. Please interview one of the local women and girls and ask how do they feel. Do not show only the positive pictures, which are, I can say most of them are fake. Do not show them to the world, because that is not the reality. I've not used this word before. I'm using it. Gender apartheid. I can surely say it's against women. It is a gender apartheid that now the Afghanistan women are facing. I live in a first world country. I'm happy here. I'm lucky. But I'm not happy because my own people are not safe at all. And they do not experience what I do experience.
Nasima, thank you so much for joining us on The Briefing.
No worries.
That was Senator Fatima Payman and Nasima Kakaea from Women for Change there. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Briefing. That's it for now. Before you go, though, we'd love it if you could share this app with someone else you think might enjoy it as well. It's a really easy way you can support everything we do here at The Briefing. And you can find us on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. I'm Helen Smith. Catch you next time.